All right, guys, thanks for joining us. This is a special episode. It's been a tough episode too because me and Eric had our kids were doing the right thing, doing church stuff, and so we're getting a later start to it. But that said, this to me is my most exciting episode because I love talking softball, and I thought there's no one better than to bring on the great Eric Bailey. So Eric's nice enough to join us a late start, and some technical difficulties, but it's better than some of me and Steve's episodes where I have just gone black screen in the middle of it. So it's hey, I'll take it. We started off with no black screens. Nobody's called me yet, so I'm excited about this episode. But Eric, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. We appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, Eric Bailey, worked at the Tulsa World, been there 20 years last year. So this is my 21st year at the World, covered Oklahoma since 2012. So I've seen a lot of really good softball over the past decade, and it's been fun getting to watch these players develop. And I tell you, this year is going to be like none other.
That's the truth. I figured, and we just kind of break it down. There's so many new faces. We were talking before we came on. This isn't set in stone. Eric kind of told us the same thing. He's like, Patty's kind of keeping this close to the vest. She don't want to let too much stuff out. And you know what? I think Patty's still trying to figure out some stuff about this team. But let's start off with the infield, Eric. Who do you think some players to watch this season is going to be?
Well, you really got to start with your leader coming back, your third-team All-American. And she'll play some first and pitch maybe even. It's Ella Parker. She had a great year last year as a freshman. I think she starts everything in the infield. And then you got Sid Sanders, who you got the big power from. And outside of that, it really varies to see who's going to get playing time. And I think that's what this first 5 games, we're going to learn so much about this team in the next 4 days. With 5 games in 4 days, I think Patty's going to try all kinds of different combinations to see what she has out there. It's not easy replacing a Tiare Jennings at shortstop. You had Melissa Brito. It's so hard to really find replacements for those kind of players. But when you look at the recruiting class and how they hit the transfer portal, I really think that we'll see some new names emerge.
Absolutely. And I'm really excited about Isabella Emmerling. I mean, at catcher, I think Kenzie Hansen's impossible to replace. But I think early on we're going to notice, when you have a senior class like OU did, these big names like Kenzie Hansen, Tiara Jennings, Jada Coleman, I mean, those are names you don't replace. And I think just that leadership, Agbiani, I think, was a huge pickup this season. I really feel like they can probably pencil her in at second, and she's going to be – and she pitches too. I think people forget that she pitched a little last year. That BYU team that came to Norman and beat them. I mean, she's a big part. And, I mean, she hit over 400. I mean, a heck of a hitter. It's just there's a lot of new faces that we're going to look at and say, wow, we didn't know that, we had this girl or we had that girl. But infield, I think you're right on the money with Ella Parker.
If you break down the roster, 8 returners, 9 freshmen, 5 transfers. So, doing the math there, you're looking at, 2/3 of this team essentially is new, not just to us, but is new to the OU program. So, yeah, definitely lots of change there. Jeremy kind of stole my thunder a little bit there with very interested to see at catcher because Patty's going to throw lots of different people. I don't think it's going to be a situation where we just see one pitcher like what we've seen last year. I think we're going to see multiple pitchers. So will Emmerling get used to the pitching staff pretty quick? What is behind her and that sort of thing. And, I'm kind of interested also to see who the shortstop's going to be.
Yeah.
You mentioned Emmerling. I mean, when you look at what Patty was trying to bring in, you're looking at a player who played 2 years at North Carolina. She's a redshirt junior this year. redshirted as a true freshman. He got an injury, but hit 323 last year. I mean, it was impressive. You need that kind of veteran leadership. There's a lot of juniors that came in too, so you have players that have been through the fire, and I think that she's going to be really good. I know Patty had a lot of good things to say about her during our media day, and you're right. Replacing Kinsey Hansen is going to be so hard, but it can be done. I mean, it has to be done. And rather, it can't be done. It has to be done. And I think that they're going to rely on her a lot for everything, from leadership to on the field production to getting used to those pitchers. And then you mentioned I'm gonna butcher her name all year. I just have to spell it right. I don't know how to say it.
Hey, the only reason I remember it because I remember Benny Agbani that
Yeah,
played for the Mets. So that's the only way I remember.
That's something else you got to remember too. There's a lot of players like that have strong athletic lines in their families. But Agbani, I mean, here's someone BYU. She knows what it's like to win at Lowe's Field. They did it last year in the regular season. Outstanding defensive player. I mean, that's the big thing with her. And then she hits 424. And she can throw. I mean, we talked about Ella Parker. She's working on throwing too. So they're going to have a ton of arms they can play with this season to see who's going to, the cream's going to rise to the top. But Agbayani, I think defensively, she's going to be huge. And then you get that bat, 424 last year. You cannot complain about that. And that's what they need. They need those kind of hitters. And that's what makes Oklahoma number 3 in the country right now.
And what another name that nobody throws out, it's funny, she kind of gets lost in is, Sid Sanders, who big hits in the College World Series. I was at the Florida game, and I remember telling my father-in-law, I said, she's either strikeout or home run. And then she hit the home run, and he goes, well, I'm glad she did the home run there. So it's like, but she's going to start forming into a more complete hitter. I really like Sydney Sanders. I like it that her name's not mentioned a lot. Ella Parker, Pickering, they're getting a lot of the pub. Dayton's getting the pub. But Sid Sanders is just kind of sitting back, letting them get all the pub. And, this is a player that can easily hit over 20 home runs. And, I mean, she is a big power hitter.
Yeah, you think about her, you think about how strong – she had a strong start to the season last year. And then kind of just hit kind of a slump. I mean, it happens in this sport. But you're right. It was either home run or strikeout. It was one of the two, never anything in between. And some of those hits she got early in the season when she was in the slump, she was hitting the ball hard, but she was hitting it right at people. So I just think she's one of those players that you learn a lot from last year. You take from that. That was her first real chance to play at Oklahoma. Of course, she came from Arizona State, but that was her chance to really start getting used to Oklahoma and understand the expectations. And I think having that lineup around her, all those veterans, I think it helped. With her, it's just a mental game. Everyone sees her potential physically. It's just mentally. How tough can she be? And I think she'll be able to conquer that this year.
And I think, there's nobody better obviously hats off to Patty, who was named the Olympic coach this week. I think that's a really, really exciting thing, especially since those games are going to be here in OKC. I think that's really exciting. But as much as, we all admire Patty for her X's and O's and pushing the right buttons. And, no matter, sometimes we're like, why is this person hitting here or pitching here? And she continues to show why she's the GOAT and I'm a guy doing a podcast. But one thing I did hear, listening to a little bit of her press conference the other day, she was talking about this opening trip and all the different faces and all the different, all the different players going in different roles. And she talked about kind of being excited to take that many bus rides together. And she talked about how she'll know early on where her team's at because she likes the loud bus. That a quiet bus is problems, that a loud bus is happiness. And, that just the mental side that Patty gets about that and understanding this with this young team. And we're going to go play this California trip. And Jeremy and I talked about it last week of how, she's kind of seeing this as being an ambassador of the game and helping out these other programs that are, potentially going to struggle with this. Plus also being able to recruit the West Coast while you're out there. All those things are great. Patty gets it, but just want to give a shout out for Patty. Number one, being the Olympic coach. Number two, just thought the whole bus ride thing was a unique quote and thought that just kind of gives us a little more insight into Patty's always team building. She's always trying to get that team to be closer. We're all girl dads here, and it would be very cringe for me to try to use the right words here, but the aura, all those things around OU softball is just immaculate, and that's just hats off to Patty.
Well, I thought it was interesting too. You're right. The chemistry needs to be formed, and they form it in Norman, but it would be nice to see them form it in California as well. Not just on the field. You hit the nail on the head when you said off the field. Those bus rides, those meals, those hotel rooms. It really brings you together, and I think that's huge. I think it's a good opportunity too for a lot of these California kids to go back home and play for their friends and family. You're out here in Oklahoma all year playing softball, but now you get to go to California and play some games. And I think that's huge for them. It'll be kind of like a reward for all the time they've put in so far to get to go to California and play. And you mentioned Olympic team. I sent Patty a text right away when I seen that, just saying that's pretty incredible. When you think about it, you're an ambassador for your country. It's not only the sport, it's your country. And she's going to guide those young women in 2028 in Oklahoma City at Devon Park. So I think that's pretty huge. It speaks a lot for her success too. She's going to be the first female coach to lead the Olympic team for Team USA, and that's big too. Mm-hmm. You look at all the milestones and everything she's accomplished over the years. This is just another one you can add to a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, and me and Eric both coach softball teams, so we know how much continuity means with a softball team. I know I've been blessed with a bunch of girls that have played with each other for a long time, and I don't ever have to worry about like any kind of drama that you get with 14, 16-year-old girls, 18-year-old girls.
They don't have that.
Yeah. But
as a high school principal, I never deal with girl drama. It doesn't exist. That never happens.
But Patty hasn't had to deal with that in a while because she had those strong leaders that they're Jada, Tiara, Kenzie, Nicole May, those girls are not going to lose this team. They are going to keep a tight-knit group. That's why a Cassidy Pickering and Ella Parker can just fit right into that team and not miss a beat. So one thing I'm really interested to see, it just shows you though how much respect Patty Gasso has got from what over the years. I mean, because you look at all the players they lost, and to still be, people are like, they're ranked third, and I'm like, they're ranked third, and they lost a senior class that won 4 straight national championships, like that are not replaceable. So I think that's more of a respect to put them at 3. Florida and Texas are good. They are good softball teams. Florida returns dang near their whole team that had OU on the ropes. So, I mean, you can look at it, 2 ways. I look at it as that's a respect to Patty Gasso and what she's built at the University of Oklahoma, because they are being ranked number 3 and the amount of newcomers they have. Yeah, they've got a strong transfer class, but that said, they're new, and how are you going to mesh them all together? And I think Patty likes that challenge.
I had a chance to talk to Tara Henry this week. She's the general manager of Softball America, the softball publication. We were talking about that exact same subject. Some people think number 3 may be too high. Some people think it's too low. I mean, but Tara told me that number 3 is just right for this team because it speaks a lot, just what you said, Jeremy, to the respect of this coaching staff and how they've been able to grow and develop players, not just physically, but mentally as well. So I think number 3 is a good starting off point because this is a talented roster, unproven in Oklahoma, but proven in terms of where their last transfer school was at or through the high school ranks. So I think number 3 is a big sign of respect for this program.
Yeah, and we've mentioned it too. And Steve, I'll let you say your thing, but we'll move to after your point, Steve. Let's move to outfield because, I'm giddy right now. The outfield is where, I look at that and I'm like, yeah, I'm just ready to see him play. I'm ready to see what pans out. But sorry to interrupt you there, Steve.
No. Go ahead, and we can talk some outfield. I mean, obviously, the name that means the most to me in the outfield is, Cassidy Pickering. I figure she'll be in left field. Don't know that for a fact, obviously, but how
You
good
can
is Abby
pencil
Dayton?
Cassidy Pickering in at left field.
you know, um, you know, and just what's this going to look like? And it's kind of been one of those deals for the last 4 years. Water covers 80% of the world, and Jada Coleman covers the other 20%. So what's it going to look like defensively out there? Eric, what breadcrumbs did Patty give out on our outfielders as we head into this season?
It's funny. She is huge on Abigail Dayton, or we'll start calling her Abby. Her official name is Abigail, but I think everyone's going to call her Abby, and she'll get that nickname soon by the OU fans. I can't wait to see her play. You just look at what she brings to this team. I mean, she walked into our first press conference. We had a newcomers press conference back in November. Tiny. She's small, 5'3". She reminds me of Riley Boone a little bit with the way her size is, but she has the speed of Riley Boone too. You look at her; she had 6 triples last year. Just 9 doubles, hit 431, which led the Pac-12 at Utah. She brings the whole resume. And Patty Gasso said they're going to run her. I mean, they're going to run her. She stole 8 bases last year. I could see that number being topped this year. I'm just so impressed with what she brings to this team. And, in center field, you really need that leader. You need that quarterback out there. And you're right. Everyone got used so much to Jada Coleman and what she brings to the team. You got used to it. I mean, it wasn't, even the unexpected almost became expected. You think about all the home runs she stole. So I think that's the big name to watch coming forward. I just can't wait to see her play. And it's going to be interesting what happens in right field. The thing is, you got a lot of bats too. You got a lot of players that can hit, and what they need is just to keep that batting average up. To have someone that's going to consistently hit 300-400 in right field, and she has a lot of opportunities to find someone to play right. And you mentioned Pickering a little while ago. I was just so impressed with her. She just didn't seem phased by college softball when she arrived. She came through and hit the ground running, and she really peaked when you look at it at the College World Series last year. She did outstanding. She was clutch. So I'm looking forward to that freshman to sophomore jump with Cassidy Pickering as well.
Eric, how much do you think too that that senior class too last year? I mean, the transition that you see, and people are like, "Man, these players just come in and transition so well." I think it's pretty easy when you have that leadership there, and that's really, I think, going to be. And we might not know till conference season starts if it is how our leaders are, what leaders are forming. Because I look at Abby Dayton, and she's a player that, to me, is probably going to start just her leadership role is going to keep going higher and higher and higher as the season goes. I mean, this is a player that she didn't make an error last year, guys. I mean, 1,000 filled it 1,000% last year, and not many people talk about that with her. I mean, a hitter, a complete 5-tool player, and just somebody that you can put in there, and nobody's going to fill Jada Coleman's shoes. I mean, but that said, she's somebody you can put in there, but you need those strong leaders, and that's kind of my deal has always been is Cassie Pickering, Ella Parker. By the end of the season, you could tell like it was starting, the light bulb was starting to go off, and it makes you wonder how much those seniors help on that, which they obviously did. But I don't know. What do you think that I'm looking more into that as a coach, or is it more just those girls just know how to play softball?
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, you look at it; they left really really big shoes to fill. But you know what? They also left their leadership values with these returners. Patty only has 5 really strong returners. Not with all due respect to the rest of the roster. And there's one player that we keep hearing, and she didn't even play last year. It was Nellie McEnroe Marinas. Didn't play last year. Was injured, but she learned a lot. She even mentioned talking about taking mental reps in the dugout during the College World Series. So I just think that you lean on those leaders, you lean on those players, and then you fit in those transfer players who have been through the battles. They're startup. They understand, and I think that's going to be huge too for this program. So it'll allow the freshmen to come along a little slower, but those returners, those seniors, those players that have played at OU, it's going to be so important for them to kind of hold their hand this program, and they learn from the best. You mentioned all those names earlier that played last year. they learn from those players. And I think that's something we'll see. It may take a little bit of time to develop, of course, but this isn't 2 years ago when you only lose one game all year. This is a team that's going to grow as the season continues. So even if there's a couple losses early in the year, this team's going to find themselves. You just know that because of who's returning and because of Patty Gasso.
That brings up a point a conversation I kind of want to get into a little bit. I was looking at the SEC preseason rankings and, just kind of like same thing as the national rankings. OU's third behind Texas and Florida. But when you go to the actual preseason ranking for everybody, not just the SEC, 10 of the top 15 teams are in the SEC. Okay. Number 1, Texas. Number 2, Florida. 3, OU. 4, OSU. 5, Tennessee. 6, UCLA. 7, A&M. LSU's 9. Then we go back to Bama and so on and so forth. I guess my concern is, we've all dealt with the sky is falling with OU football and with OU basketball when we've got into conference play, and it's been tough, and we went through some growing pains. How do we think, as much as I would love to say, this is another season, we have 1 loss or 0 losses or something like that, I don't think that's realistic with the turnover that we've had, with the tough schedule that we have. But do you and this could go to either one of you guys, but just kind of what level of concern do you have with that, of how are we going to respond when we go to a weekend series and we might drop 2 out of 3? Because, the Big 12 was good, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't every weekend. It was certain weekends we know, hey, I've got to be up for this weekend series, for that weekend series. And it looks to me like the depth in the SEC, just kind of like it's been these other sports that we follow so much, is this going to be deeper?
Eric, I'll let you touch on it, but I'm going to add this because I remember last year when we got beat 2 out of 3 from Texas, you would have thought like our season was over. And I remember telling my wife after that game, I said, we are such a spoiled fan base. Like, we have the game of softball is such softball, baseball, you lose games. And we've made losing obsolete at OU. When you watch us play and we lose, people are like, it's not the same team.
What's wrong? Yeah.
Did you see how many games they lost? They lost 3. I'm like, any other school would be building statues for a coach, which we did build a statue for Patty. But that said, I think we are a spoiled fan base, and Patty gives us more time, I think. As OU fans, we're never going to be satisfied. But that said, I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Eric? I look at it as just like with Patty Gasso, I always say the woman is the greatest, to me, softball coach of all time. So I give her grace.
Well, and you mentioned losing 2 or 3 to Texas. Don't forget Oklahoma State last year too.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of reasons why you wonder, okay, is the sky falling? I still remember 2 years ago when OU lost to Baylor, and she came to that Tuesday press conference after that, and she told us everything's fine. You're going to lose a game. Of course, that ended the long winning streak and such. It was almost a relief to lose that game.
Mm-hmm.
Program, you say spoiled. You have to blame Patty Gasso and her teams for spoiling the OU fan base. I mean, you look over the last 4 years, of course, the national championships, but they are 235-15 over those 4 years, 15 losses. To be honest, this year, they're probably going to lose 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10. And that's a big number compared to the last 4 years. But the game is built for development, it's for growth. You want to peak late. And going back to the conference games, I would have loved to have seen last year's roster with this year's schedule. I would have enjoyed that a lot. Mm-hmm. But, the same things could have happened. They could have lost some games in conference play if they were in the SEC last year. The key is to be peaking in May and June, late May, early May, mid-May to June. That's when you want to peak. Yeah. And that's the plan for, especially with this new look roster. They want to get there because once you get there, she knows how to win postseason games. She's proven that. Oh. You just got to get there, but you want to have that momentum to get there.
Yeah. Well, Speaking of peaking and going at the right time, we probably need to talk a little bit about who's going to be toeing the rubber. How do you guys see the pecking order at pitcher? The name I've heard the most is the Louisiana transfer, Sam Landry, but just kind of what have you guys heard? And do you think that's going to be true committee with 6, 7 different people, or are we going to get a main 3 or 4 rotation? What do you guys think there?
It's funny you mentioned Sam Landry. I think that was someone, when I was talking to Tara Henry with Softball America, Sam Landry was the first name she mentioned. And Patty mentioned in her preseason press conference that she's the one she's leading. That was Patty's exact word. Sam Landry is leading. So that tells you a lot about what they're bringing in. You also have Kirsten Gill, of course, who's going to be really good and reliable. And you talked about battle scarred. She is too. She's thrown 2 full years, especially more last year than her freshman year. So I think that's going to help with that veteran leadership. Patty's really high on Audrey Lowry, a freshman. But again, it's a freshman. You still need to get her to grow and develop. And the one player I want to see what kind of jump she makes is Peyton Monticelli. She just comes off the bench, comes out of the pen, and she brings heat. I mean, easily, hard thrower. And I think that, you always need that. You always want that kind of arm in your rotation. So I think those are 4 names that, you can right off the top of our head that you can talk and look at. These guys are guys we can really count on. And then you bring in the other ones that can throw, Biani, Ella Parker, guys like that can also give you some innings too. So it's going to be interesting to see how Patty uses them. One thing for sure is Jen Rocha is really an outstanding pitching coach. I mean, you don't even have to really try to debate about that. She's done it so many different ways. She's worked with so many different pitchers. She's had 1-year pitchers who she got the best out of them in that 1 year. I mean, just look at Kelly Maxwell last year. Kelly Maxwell was an All-American when she came to Oklahoma, and she left easily the best pitcher in the country. And, there was room for growth. Even an All-American has room for growth, and we saw that last year with Kelly Maxwell. You go back to pitching by committee, it could be that this year in some games. You just look at last year's championship game, the deciding game of the championship series. She brought everybody in. She threw the kitchen sink. And you know what? It's not just going out there and knowing they could do the job. It's having the confidence to put them on that stage and tell them, go help us win this game. And all the pitchers that threw on that night, that Thursday night in Oklahoma City, did their job. And the season built up to that. And that's where it is. That's why I really feel good about this pitching staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what's funny is Isabella Smith isn't mentioned a lot because she's at Campbell. If that
Jeremy,
was
what's Campbell's mascot? What's Campbell's mascot?
Are they the Camels?
They are the Camels. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, if that was a football player, our fan base would be losing their crap. So, but I mean, she was the CAA Pitcher of the Year last year, and not a lot of people talk about it. I think Peyton's going to be our closer. Like, I could see us having a staff to where, we don't have pitchers that go and pitch every game or pitch the full game. We bring relievers in because that's a perfect spot for Peyton, is bringing her in as hard as she throws. You change those speeds up and you get that flamethrower after you get somebody who's got some junk. And I mean, it just changes the eyesight, changes their timing. So I think we're going to see a lot more. And then Kirsten Dill, I mean,
you've got a couple of lefties, right? Dill and Lowry are both lefties. So,
yes. Well, and
see different angles, see different things.
Kirsten Dill went 14-1 last year. Is that not insane that she goes 14-1? I just told Steve.
Your dog got really excited about that.
Yeah, I told Steve beforehand. I said my dogs will bark eventually. So, but she went 14-1, 1.97 ERA last year. Second team All Big 12, and nobody talks about her. And you remember when we got her in our recruiting class, Kirsten Dill, we were excited about her. Heck, I'm still excited about her.
Okay, here's a hard-hitting question. We know Kirsten Dill pitches his sunglasses a lot. The pictures I've seen of Landry, she's always got glasses on. Are we going? Is she going full Kareem Rex specs? Is she going what? Eric, you're the insider. What kind of eyewear are we looking at here from Landry?
I don't know. You're right, because she wears glasses, and And that's pretty bold. I don't think she wears a mask. It's just the glasses too
Yeah.
for a pitcher. That's crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, and you know, we're going back to Sam Landry in innings. She threw 198 innings last season at Louisiana, almost 200 innings. And you know, I've covered some of these Oklahoma teams where I've, you know, when they're limited on how many All-Americans they can nominate. Every year, you think, why isn't that girl an All-American? That's because each school has limits to how many All-Americans you can nominate. And then for pitching, you have to throw 100 innings. Now, Oklahoma's been so dominant in the circle those years when, you know, without Kelly Maxwell the year before, I think they had a hard time getting pitchers to 100 innings because they spread the wealth so much. So I'm curious how Sam Landry is going to adjust to not having to throw 198 innings in a season, which is a crazy number. You know, she threw 147 the season before. And I don't think Oklahoma pitchers touched 147 in years. So this is going to be new territory for her, for Landry. But I think in a way you probably feel good about it too, because you can just focus on what your job is. You don't have to carry the team. So I think that'll be interesting to see how we talk about seeing how things play out. I want to see how that plays out.
Well, and I listened to it's an all girls podcast with, she's a big OU fan, and she messaged me on TikTok, and she's like, hey, I listened to your stuff, and I started listening to her. She had Chris Plank on there, and I've noticed a lot of talk about Sophia Bordy, which I'm really excited about her. It sounds like they're going to redshirt her this year, which I think is a great idea. We didn't have that advantage with Jeremiah Fears as a high school senior, but I didn't realize, so Chris Plank said this, that she was going to originally just go play travel ball to get ready for this season. And Patty Gasso and Jenna Rocha said, hey, why don't you just come and just, we'll redshirt you this year. You can get acclimated. I think that's a better idea because it gets her.
And maybe that's what Joe John's doing this whole time with Davion Mitchell. That's what it is. See, I got to mention Joe John on every podcast. So everybody out there, I mentioned Joe John. He still has a job, and we have equated Joe John to Patty in the same podcast. So I'm not sure how I can top that. So I'll be quiet for a while.
But I do think Sophia Bordy has potential to. I hate doing comparisons, but like you look at her potential. Could she be like a Jordy Ball? You know, because OU's always had that one dominant pitcher that, you know, they can lean into. And when you got that big game coming up, that's who you need. Like Kelly Maxwell last year, she went through a little funk.
Yeah.
And, I mean, she even said at the end of the year, like, she had some issues that not a lot of people knew. But that just goes to the greatness of Patty Gasso. You can hide that.
I agree. Sophia Bordy reclassifying is huge because it allows her to get acclimated to the program, like you said. It also allows her to get stronger. That's what Patty wants. He wants her to get stronger, and not to take anything away from travel ball, because Jeremy, you know how much it means to both of us. Being a spring with Oklahoma and learning everything from, you know, just even getting on the mound and throwing BP in the circle and throwing BP against Oklahoma's hitters. That's going to help her next year. And, you know, we don't see many freshmen redshirt for this reason. And that could tell you what kind of special player she is. Hey, I want to tell you, I got 1% on my iPad. So if it goes out, I'm so sorry.
Hey,
so many technical difficulties.
Hey, we'll let you, we'll end it there. Hey, before we jump off too, I just kind of want to mention, we were talking about before, Tia Malloy and in right field. I think a lot of people forget Maya Bland. Also, too, an outfielder that is going to probably see. They're going to fight it out for right field. Two good options. So, but I'm excited for the season. Eric, we won't keep you any longer. That way we don't lose you. But, man, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Eric. We appreciate it, man.
Hey, I love talking softball. We'll have to bring you on again, man.
All right. Anytime. Just hook me up.
All right, buddy. Hey, guys, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, subscribe to it. Follow us on Apple and Spotify. Check it out. Hey, softball season starting, so we're going to work on getting Steve more acclimated once he starts knowing the players too. That way we don't have to do any research. But hey, I had to research this time, because a lot of new players. But Guys, thanks for
Hey,
listening.
all I know is Porter Moser doesn't have too many good players. That's not a problem for the Sooner basketball team. And like I told Jeremy before we got on, if you were here for basketball talk, if you're like the Marines, the few and the proud who wanted to hear more Sooner basketball talk, if we happen to pull the miracle on Saturday, Jeremy and I will do an emergency pod for you on the Tennessee game. If not, we'll be back with more bedwetting next week. If you want to get any of your takes in, any sponsorships, any of those things, soonercast@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for the subscribes. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Stay safe out there during flu season. And Boomer.
Boomer Sooner.
Jeremy, thanks a bunch.